Okay, hopefully that is all linked up. It looks like it has. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this, which is our fourth AES webinar. Today we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about changes to the BREEAM. I'll give people another 30 or 40 seconds to log on before we get cracking. We like to keep very tight time frames there. We run a tight ship here. I will just say while waiting for a few of the stragglers to join us, this is going to be recorded. It is going to be saved and available on YouTube and the AES website later on. So because of that, we don't tend to share any slides or content, because you can just pop online and rewatch this anytime you want. So hopefully that answers the first question about will you be sending out slides. We've got your cameras and mics muted, but you should have access to the Q&A box. So if you do want to send us any questions, then do feel free to. I can see it's already gone 2:31. Was I really talking for a minute? That felt like 10 seconds. I'll hand you over to Pete, who is the official introducer for the day.
Thank you, John. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining today. So my name is Pete Best. I'm part of the client management team at AES. I'm joined by my colleague Wayne Moore, who's our BREEAM service lead and who I'll shortly hand over. And obviously John's just done a brief intro there. And what John will be doing at the end is picking up and fielding any questions that get sent through. On that note, if you could please drop any questions that you have into the text box, and then what we'll do is we'll cover off as many as we can at the end with the time that we've got remaining. Also, thanks to those that have already sent some through already. So if you can pop the slide on, please, Wayne. So first of all, a brief introduction to AES, just for anyone that's not already familiar with us or who hasn't managed to join some of the previous webinars that we've already held. So AES, we've been around since 2005, so for 20 years now, and we've built up a great reputation in the industry. During the time that we've been around, we've grown substantially. So we now have expert consultants that span most of the UK. And we provide a complete suite of sustainability services, so covering both new build development projects, right from planning through to site completion, and both in domestic and also non-domestic, but also numerous sustainability services for retrofit projects as well. So in short, if you've got a project and you need a hand, get in touch with me and I can point you to an expert that will be able to help you. Along the way, we've developed long-term relationships, and we already work with most of the top 25 developers in the UK, delivered thousands of projects and lots of flagship examples as well. And we've got lots of market-leading expertise in SAP Part L and the home energy model, and various colleagues who sit on working panels and are advising government on incoming regulations. Also won lots of awards. So we've won a BREEAM award. We delivered the first BREEAM residential, so formerly the Home Quality Mark. And most recently, we won Product of the Year at the House Builder Awards for our Hub and Site View picture evidence app. Finally, we've also got a sister company who are AES Compliance and Testing, and they have nationwide air, sound and ventilation capacity and provide in excess of 25,000 air tests per year. So if you need a hand, obviously let us know, we can help you that as well. With that, that's a bit about us, and I'll pass it over to you, Wayne.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, horrible photo. Sorry about that. Right. So, my name is Wayne Moore. I am the BREEAM service lead for AES. I'm sorry, it's not working. Sorry. Okay, there we go. It's working. I apologise. Yeah, so I'm the BREEAM service lead. I've worked in BREEAM quite a long time. I've worked on numerous assessment types, from new build, refurb, care homes, offices, airport hangars. So probably seen most things that BREEAM can throw at us. Although we're still surprised now and again. I'm an assessor and an AP. And I've been doing this a very long time. So one of my colleagues saw my BREEAM AP certificate the other day and commented on the date being quite a long time ago. Put it this way: when I did my AP, they didn't send them out as PDFs. You actually got a paper version in the post. But I've also worked in various areas that kind of feed into BREEAM. So be it, LCAs for Matter 1, Brookles with Energy 1, some energy auditing work as well, just to kind of understand more what feeds into those reports that we receive when we're doing a BREEAM, and just a bit more of an understanding of the processes. But probably for more important for this meeting is the is that having worked on BREEAM for a long time, I've been involved in all of these different versions of BREEAM. So I've seen the changes that happen. So some of these some of the changes that we've between versions that we've had have involved very small changes, evolutions. Some have been a touch more traumatic, and just bigger step changes that BRE have looked to implement. So I've been through the process on this a number of times. This is not the first time I've had to deal with BRE changing the criteria, and so quite a bit of experience of that process. So from a really looking at the sort of the main things that have happened that have come into this version. So we've now got so life cycle assessments are now mandatory for all assessments that are going for excellent or above. Typically, we would have always advised that you go for an LCA as part of getting BREEAM excellent, but going forward, it's going to be a mandatory element of all excellent ones, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. There is an increased focus on operational energy in the new version. So previously, operational energy fell under Energy 1, which was was 4 credits, and it was often not pursued just because if you were getting 4 credits under Energy 1, you were meeting your minimum for excellent. People didn't tend to pursue this. It's now been taken out of that. It's now Energy 2. Which for people who've been involved for BREEAM for a while, it's going to take probably until the next version for us to get used to Energy 2 not being sub-metering. They've also brought in a stricter benchmarking for water. This isn't going to impact most of your assessments that much. Where this will have a big impact is that a lot of local authorities will ask for a BREEAM standard and additional requirements. So we see a lot of BREEAM very good with excellent in water, or BREEAM excellent with 5 credits under water 1. What is going to happen here is those local authority requirements will remain. It's going to be harder for you to achieve those. So that's going to have a bigger impact, not just in the assessment, but in regards to planning. Probably one of the larger changes is that ecology has now been aligned with the biodiversity net gain. So late in the life cycle of the last version of BREEAM, what we were finding was anybody complying with the 10% BNG requirements were maximising their ecology credits. Which is great, but it became a bit of a crutch for assessors, design teams, developers, knowing that you were going to score a lot of ecology credits. BREEAM has always looked at sort of regulatory levels as a pass rating rather than one of the higher levels. And so they've adjusted this, and now you're looking at maybe 1 or 2 credits for achieving that level. And so you're going to have to either far outperform what people were doing on ecology in the last version, or look to invest in other credits across the BREEAM assessment. The indoor air quality plan is now a mandatory requirement for very good or above assessments. This won't impact that many fully fitted assessments, but where you're looking at say a shell and core assessment, because it only really opened up 1 additional credit under shell and core, tended not to do the air quality plan, which is going to be required now if you want a very good or better assessment. There are no quick fixes with BREEAM this time. So under previous changes, there was often like 1 big report or a couple of sections, whereas if you address those, it made the difference. What's happened with this one is, with what they've done with the weightings, it feels like they've moved it so they've taken small bites out of the scoring, so that rather than going, so I can remember when the LCA came in, it really was doing the LCA would make the difference. When they really adjusted ecology, again, addressing ecology was going to make the difference to bridge that gap between the 2 versions. This time, I don't feel like there is a clearly obvious route like that, and it's going to be, addressing the sustainability of the whole project is going to be the main thing, if any of this is concerning and the changes coming, the registrations of the current version are still open. So some key BREEAM dates. So 30th September, getting close. The version 7 registration is open. There will be reasons that you want to register under version 7. There will be scenarios where it is better to use that version. On the same day, the version 7 platform is going to be issued to assessors. This will give us a chance to look at the calculation tools. At the moment, we haven't had sight of those. So, for example, for Water 1, I expect that the change in benchmarks will lead to maybe a building that would get 3 credits for Water 1 getting 2 credits, but we don't know that for certain right now. So once we have those issued, we will be able to advise more on that. But that's going to be an important date for all assessors. And 27th of January, the current version is going to be retired. I would what we would suggest is, if you've got projects that are likely going to need BREEAM coming up, it is worth registering in advance of this date. I would advise not to leave it until the last week, because BRE's website usually falls over as everybody tries to register in the last week. But it is worth doing. It's £540 to register a project with BREEAM, and you can always change the version you're working on from version 6 to version 7. You can't go the other way. And once that date has passed, there are going to be a very small number of projects that can be registered against version 6. If you had a planning permission that was granted prior to the start of a new version of BREEAM, you can backdate it, but that's basically the only time you'll be able to do that. The new, so what we've got here is the BREEAM weightings that have been brought in. So on the left, we've got version 6, and on the right, version 7. I think the main ones of interest really here are energy, where they've readdressed it. So in the previous version, energy was sort of downgraded in its value in the assessment, and they've sort of fed back in and made energy and carbon really the driver this time around. Transport has decreased in quite a bit of value. I think the feeling with that is that a lot of the transportation aspects that they use have become commonplace, so they devalue that a little bit. And ecology, as you can see, has also taken quite a hit as well. And I think, again, that last time round they really emphasised ecology. This time they're moving back towards energy as the heaviest area in the assessment. So what I've done here is I've just pulled out some of the changes to the minimum standards and changes to the early stage actions, because if you're going to be involved in BREEAM, these are the first things that you're going to come across as you get involved with BREEAM for version 7. So I've mentioned the indoor air quality plan is a new minimum standard. Energy 1. So the requirement for 4 credits for excellent hasn't changed. What they have brought in for version 7 is some alternative routes for you to comply. Now, what I would this is an example where version 7 is beneficial for certain projects. So for a shell-only assessment, you don't need to do the 4 credits under Energy 1. You can go via passive design, you can demonstrate the minimum standard. For anybody who's done a shell-only retail, shell-only industrial, they'll know how difficult it is to get those 4 credits. So for something like a shell-only assessment, this might be a reason that you want to do version 7 over version 6. Water consumption, yes, they've increased the minimum up to a 15% improvement. That's going to affect a very small number of assessments. Usually you're going to be wanting 2, 3, 4 credits here. So the minimum standard is not going to have much of an impact. And materials 1, I've mentioned, I'll come back to that. Early stage credits. So they've got they've brought in a requirement for a clear sustainability brief. This is something that's really been brought over from the refurbishment assessments, and they tend to show, having to put together some clear objectives, incorporate the budget and the client requirements, and who's going to be involved in this, and also expanding on the roles and responsibilities within the project as it relates to sustainability. This was all kind of included in with general roles and responsibilities in version 6, so these will be separated out, and a separate report and document will be needed. Energy 2, they've brought, because they've reworked Energy 2 with the operational energy, for looking for an energy strategy that deals with operational energy and carbon performance of the building. And these are all going to be like by the end of stage 2, so that these to secure these credits. Energy 4, we've had a change where LZC feasibility studies are no longer needed. After many years of reading through those, I feel like we've finally got to a point where they're actually correct. Now they've got rid of them, so it's a shame. But there is also the passive design analysis. Early stage requirements are still in there. They've slightly tweaked the credits, and so this is dealing more with the building form, but that's your early stage requirement under Energy 4. And then materials 1, which I mentioned a couple of times. So what they've done here is obviously they've made it a minimum standard for excellence. They've separated it out into 3 stages, into designs, into concept, technical, and construction stage. You have to do at least one of those if you're going for BREEAM Excellence. We would, of course, advise doing all of them. If you're going through the modelling process, it makes sense to do each stage. However, I think the technical and the construction stage, if you do both of those, that will give you access to the exemplary, potentially the exemplary credits as well. But again, I would do them all. What they've also done is brought in a couple of additional things here that are an improvement over the process. So you no longer need to do, it's usually about 4 concept stage option appraisals. With a lot of buildings, that was pointless. You know, those last couple of options were not really adding anything to the process. So they've now said that you have to do an appropriate number, which I guess will be up to debate what that means, but it does mean that we don't have to do a set number anymore. Also, there was always a time crunch with the LCA. You know, it has to be sent to BRE pre-planning. And what we were finding was that the time was running out. There's a lot going on as well leading up to submitting a planning application. So they're now allowing 20 working days after planning submission for this to be provided to BRE, which will, it's a quality of life thing, and it's definitely an improvement. And then what I've come up with is just some other things that didn't really fit into the early stage aspects, but I think they're interesting and important to know that they're coming down the line with BREEAM. So we've got so air source heat pumps and biomass are no longer classed as LZC technologies, which is a significant move away. We were definitely seeing a lot of projects using air source heat pumps as a low carbon technology, whereas BRE are not recognising that in the Energy 4 credits anymore. And rather than awarding credits for doing a feasibility study and looking what could be installed, they're now awarding credits on the basis of how much energy how much of the energy demand of the building is provided by a compliant LZC. They've brought in a new exemplary credit, because one of the things with BRE they're always fighting against is trying to make this to BREEAM future-proof it, because it's going to be around 4, 5, 6 years sometimes. And so a credit like this is probably an attempt to do this, to achieve that. So having a zero carbon transition plan in place that is looking at achieving net zero by 2050. Often with BREEAM credits, we find that you're getting a situation where the clients and the developers think you're doing reports for the sake of credits for BREEAM. And I think something like this is a good credit that is going to show actually there is some practical use to having this kind of thing in place. It's not necessarily just an exercise to get a BREEAM credit. They've increased one of the other changes, increasing the focus on building service controls. I feel like BRE have kind of shied away from this a little bit in the past, leave it up to the M&E designers kind of approach, and not a little bit on sort of heating controls and comfort levels, but not much beyond that. They've brought in new credits here that focus on the service controls and a more smart level of controls, especially looking at heating and cooling. And one of the, and I recently just added this in because I was having a chat with an architect about it, and they've made quite a change to the car parking EV charging. So currently on version 6, if you need to have 10% of your car parking have EV charging. They've now changed that for 1 credit under the new version, which will be 10% of it is the active functional EV charging, and a further 20% of the parking having infrastructure in place to expand the EV in future. And that's quite a substantial change from what we're seeing, and potential cost increase for the developers. And I think, and oh yeah, one more, and they've also brought in a new credit looking at operational water consumption. This will, I believe this is probably brought in to balance out the difference with the increased benchmarking for Water One. This should be a relatively straightforward credit for a lot of developments. However, where you've got sort of speculative buildings where you're not going to know the occupation numbers of the building, then I think I think this might be a little bit difficult, but in most credits, this is going to help offset maybe a lost credit under Water One. And yeah, that's it for my slides. We've got the next one is coming up on 15th of October. I think it's John, who you briefly saw at the beginning of this, is going to be talking about the consultation for the Welsh Government on various documents there.
That is the plan at the moment. Yeah, thanks for that, Wayne. Yes, our next webinar, as Wayne said there, will at the moment we're saying it's going to be the Welsh Government consultation on changing Part L and Part O. May change depending on if we get any other announcements, but that's what we're saying at the moment. Right, thanks for that, Wayne. Yeah, we've got a few minutes here, so we've got a few questions I can run through. One I'll just read off the chat here. So for third-party model verification in ENE2, could this be undertaken by the same company as the modelers if it wasn't the same team?
It's a good question.
Can you explain what ENE2 is first before you go?
So ENE2 is the operational energy model. Is the operational energy. So I guess it'll probably be BRE to confirm. But what was the usual approach with this is that as long as it's not somebody actively involved in the process, then you can use. They can be within the same company. That's been a consistent approach, be it LCA, be it sort of commissioning side things. As long as they're not involved in the project, I would very much recommend having a statement of sort of conflict of interest within that as well, just to keep, so when the assessor is auditing it, they feel they're comfortable that any conflicts has been appropriately managed.
Okay. Just on that as well, with the operational energy, is there a preferred method for collecting the data? Because I appreciate it's still kind of emerging as something that developers are being asked to do. And the last time I looked into it, there was all kinds of different ways you could potentially measure operational energy. Does BREEAM set a line in the sand to say you must do it this way?
Yeah, there is a. I'd have to double check. There is a standard that they refer to within the methodology, but I can't quite recall the exact number. But yeah, they have a methodology. What they've done with this version is it hasn't changed that much from version 6. If anybody did it under that, we've still got the risk assessment in place. We've still got the process of looking at the unregulated energy. Where the extra credits here and the importance is benchmarking that we're looking at with that credit. But what you will see when you so CIPSE TM54 is the main version that they refer to in the manual. There are alternative methodologies that they allow you, so the ASHRAE standard 209 and net zero public sector building standard. So there are other alternative ways to do it, but yeah, the TM54 is tend to be what we would see for that process.
Okay, thank you. In your slides there, you mentioned that air source heat pumps are no longer considered low carbon. Does that also apply to ground source and water source? And do you know why they've taken that? Why they've changed that definition?
Yeah, I think I don't honestly know why they've changed it. My suspicion would be that they're looking to include that what was happening was those systems were viewed as low carbon rather than zero carbon, and I think they were being used a bit too frequently as the low carbon option. Whereas like I think ideally what BRE would want is okay, we've got air source heat pumps, but then they are also partly powered by PV. That's the kind of solution I think BRE was wanting. And so yeah, they've moved away from those as and honestly, I mean, it really is pushing PV very heavily in the criteria. So I think that's what they're looking for more than anything. Just trying to see. But yeah, but that is quite a big change that they've made. That so basically all they're saying now is the only LZCs they recognise are wind, solar radiation, geothermal and hydrothermal, hydropower and waste heat. They're the only ones they're currently recognising. So quite a big change from what we were used to.
Interesting. Okay, next question then. Do we know why all government-funded projects must be BREEAM certified, and is there any news on that changing at all?
All government. Do you know what? I think a lot of this comes out of the climate change emergency documents that were produced, and it allowed BREEAM allows for this. It's an easy way, a standardized method to say that we are sustainable. I can't say I've seen anything communicated where that will change, but it's definitely. I think it's felt like and I would say the same thing about, even from a planning point of view, it's become an easy check mark to say, okay, if we do that, we're sustainable. I'm not entirely sure that that's fair, but that's been the approach for using BREEAM in those projects.
If I could rephrase Rem's question with my own words, from the perspective of a BREEAM assessor, do you see one banding being asked for more frequently than others? So do you see more excellence coming through or more very goods? Or BREEAM's always felt like a postcode lottery to me.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So BREEAM excellent is probably BREEAM very good feels like the minimum you ever get asked for. Now, I think typically if people are asking for very good, there's usually some other caveats on it, like I mentioned about excellent in water or maybe excellent in energy. I think excellent is asked for probably the most. We get a few outstanding requests, but more often than not, that is a client aspiration rather than a planning or funding or government target. But we get a few, but mainly excellent. And that's why the introduction of LCA as a mandatory thing is such a big part of a change within the new version.
Okay, I'll give you one more question, and then I'll let you take a sip of water or something, Wayne. Going back to life cycle. So for the LCA assessment, does it have to be a BREEAM specific report? Could you accept an LCA that's been done for planning purposes, for example?
So as long as it covered the methodology, then it would be acceptable. I think it's a slightly difficult. I'd say, like, drop me an email after the 30th might be when the tools come out. So at the moment, we have to import it into a BREEAM specific tool, and we need specific figures for that. As long as once we know what the tool looks like for the new version, that might inform it more. But as long as it covers the methodology and has the key data in it, then I don't see why not. But I think we'd have to wait until to give a proper answer to that. I think I need to get my hands on the tool, which, like I say, 30th of September. Can't wait.
Great. Thanks for that, Wayne. I'll hand back over to Pete, I believe, for his 30-second roundup.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. Thank you, John. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining today. So just to recap, the next one will be mid-October time. So hope to see you on that one as well. And what we'll do is we will share the invite details with that in the next sort of week or so. So keep your eyes peeled, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks.